All right, on today's episode of Locked On Warriors, Tom Brady, how's he doing with the divorce? Giselle, who's she going to move on from? How does this impact society as a whole? Kylen Mills and I are going to break it down. That's all anyone can think about and talk about. And I'm kidding, obviously. We're going to talk about the Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga. Why is he not playing? Klay Thompson's reaction to Charles Barkley's criticism of him. We're going to break all that down. They got a 5-game road trip coming up. So much happening with the defending world champion Warriors, and Kylen Mills and I are going to break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter and Instagram at Kylen Mills. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. The Golden State Warriors had a convincing home victory over the Miami Heat, 123-110. Kylen, your immediate reaction to the Warriors now up 3-2 on the year.
Wow. I mean, I thought it was a great turnaround compared to Tuesday night's performance, especially in the second half for me is when the Golden State Warriors really started to turn things around. On Tuesday night, we saw the starters played great, and I thought that was still the case. Honestly, across the board, I think for all of the starting five last night. But the big question mark has been the second unit. And, to me, it hasn't even just been necessarily talent. It's been mostly just bringing effort and intensity and hustle. And you talk about just the transition defense being sloppy and defense in general, miscommunications. I thought in the second half, they really turned things around and that second unit brought a different energy. I randomly tweeted out because there was like some weird combinations happening. And there was the combo of like at one point, Steph Curry, Jordan Poole, Moses Moody, JaMychal Green, and James Wiseman. And they went on like a 16-3 or 13-3 run. They like went on a pretty significant run and like really helped grow that Golden State Warriors lead. And I was like, what an odd combination. But I think that a lot of those second unit players do deserve some credit. JaMychal Green is a player who I thought looked fantastic and really played some important minutes and contributed what the Warriors needed from him. I think it was 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, a block, and he was of the second unit +4, which was the best of some of those players coming in off the bench. So I thought JaMychal Green looked great. I think Wiseman, getting 10 points, I thought he looked good. He did what he needed to do. He got a couple of those lobs and finishes, which is what I love from him is his verticality and ability on the pick and roll. And then Jordan Poole started off a little bit slow, but I thought he really picked it up in the second half. Moses Moody, I think, gets it. He's a player who I think is really coming along and developing really, really well because I think he's a smart player and he knows what to do on defense. And I thought the defense was just the biggest noticeable improvement from Tuesday night to last night. And then Ty Jerome, like he hasn't really impressed me, I think, in the brief minutes we've been able to see him. And I know we're going to talk about Jonathan Kuminga not playing in a minute, but I just feel like big picture wise, the second unit did a much better job. The team overall just brought a lot better energy and better intensity and played better defensively because that's what I think was missing on Tuesday nights. What are your thoughts?
100% agree. They snapped that streak where for 3 straight games, they gave up 70 or more points in the first half. Warriors all-time franchise record, which is just stunning, right? I mean, when you consider how illustrious this franchise's history has been, they gave up 59. You're right. The defense was markedly improved from previous efforts. I actually love Jordan Poole's performance. For some reason, when I looked at the stat sheet, it did not reflect what I saw from him on court. I mean, he finished with 11 points. I mean, but I thought he was fantastic. He ran the offense great. I'm incredibly elated at the prospect of the next 10 to 15 years of Jordan Poole and Jonathan Kuminga. I think the chemistry between those two is blossoming, and I'm just excited to see what's going to come of that. JaMychal Green, I agree with you. Terrific inside presence. He was grabbing tough rebounds, playing great defense.
Yeah, he was really battling inside.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I agree with everything you said. Ty Jerome, look, Kerr loves him. Kerr wanted a pass first point guard. He wanted a facilitator. Jerome did hit that three, which was huge. But I still miss Quindarry Weatherspoon. I still would
Me
prefer
too.
him, especially given like what the Warriors' clear glaring weakness early in the season so far is. And I guess there's two of them. They kind of correlate. Perimeter defense still is not great, and then transition defense. And I feel like Quindarry would have helped in both those categories. But the puzzle remains Jonathan Kuminga, and I'm gonna hold steadfast to this opinion that if the Warriors are gonna repeat as world champions, he's gonna have to play part in this. And what bothers me about the Kuminga, DNPs is that it kind of signifies a regression in his game, and that's not cool. Like I don't like. I would almost rather him just stay where he is than to regress, which is what we're seeing by any measurable and by the fact that Kerr is not playing him right now. It's very concerning, and I am happy that the press in the post game actually asked Kerr about this time because they refrained from it following the blowout loss to the Suns, where he didn't come in until the 3-minute mark remaining of the third quarter. So here is Steve Kerr, who was finally asked about it and what his opinions are on not playing Jonathan Kuminga at all.
You haven't really been going to Jonathan Kuminga a lot in the rotation. I know you're still figuring out combinations and stuff, but he was also a DNP tonight. Why didn't you play him?
Well, it's hard to play more than 10 guys. It just is. I think we've done it a couple of times. We played 11 maybe in 2 of the 5 games. But Jonathan's time will come. He's a very, very young player. He's very talented. He's just got to keep working, and things will go well for him as long as he just stays on the path. This is how it goes for young guys on championship teams. It's there's just no free minutes, and but the development comes every day. That's the thing. It's not like development only comes with minutes played. It comes with coming to practice and getting the work in every single day. So he's working hard. He's staying ready, and his time will come.
You kind of alluded to it right there, but how is he kind of handling?
What's that?
I said, how is he kind of handling the fact that right now he's...
Well, JK is a very quiet guy, and we've spent a lot of time together here in the early part of the season and in camp, and he's not happy, and I don't want him to be happy. I want all of my guys to want to be out there, but it's a necessary part of the growth to learn how to win, learn how to be part of a combination. We have to put the best combinations on the floor right now that are going to help us win games. So, Moses, his spacing makes a little bit more sense. Ty's playmaking makes a little more sense. So it's all part of being in the NBA. And as long as he fights through it like he's been doing, he's going to be fine.
Your reaction to that, Kylen?
I thought it was interesting. I do understand what Kerr is saying because it's a similar theme to what we saw last year. And just this team is so deep that he can't play all the players he wants to every single night. There's going to be an ebb and flow. Some guys are going to be in the rotation certain weeks or games, and some guys are going to be out of the rotation certain weeks or games. And I do think that looking at the bench play just recently at the start of the season, I will say that I think Moses Moody's been playing better than him. I think Jermaine Green's, the players who were in the rotation. The one that surprised me is to see Ty Jerome. And I know that they're totally different positions, different types of players, but I still am surprised that he would get the minutes that he got and Jonathan Kuminga would be a do not play just based on sole talent and also importance to this team and this franchise, because Jonathan Kuminga does have to get minutes in order to continue developing, which is crucial for him. And like you said, I believe that Kuminga is going to play a key part in this Warriors defending their title. But in order to do that, he's really got to develop now early on in the season, and he's got to try to get there by the time the games that matter come around late in the season when we get to the postseason. But for him to do that, he has to get minutes. And in addition to not playing the prior, couple of games, he's playing 7 minutes a game, 8 minutes a game. That's not enough. That's not enough for him to really make strides in his game. So, and I know that practice means something, but you have to have game experience. To me, that's what
Right.
makes a really big difference. So I'm just surprised a little bit that Steve Kerr isn't making more of a conscientious effort to work Jonathan Kuminga into that second unit rotation. And that he would, with that, even just with 10, that he would put Ty Jerome in that 10 instead of Jonathan Kuminga. So that was a little bit surprising to me. Like I said, I understand with the depth that you can't play everyone every single night, but to me, like Jonathan Kuminga should be someone the Warriors are intentional about trying to get minutes to improve. And that being said, I don't think he's looked great. I don't think he's played great early in the season. I don't think he's necessarily earned a huge role off the bench, but you also have to realize he's a young player who still needs a lot of refining. And that's one thing I feel like has been a little bit eye-opening going into the season, that he still does have a ways to go. That's like my
Yeah.
takeaway from his play early on, is that like Kuminga is still not there. But how do you get there if you don't play in games? And you're not getting any game experience. It's just one game. I don't want to fly off the handle, but I do think that it is important that Jonathan Kuminga has a role off the bench moving forward in order to get better and to be at the point where he's a major contributor come postseason time.
I agree. If without the reps, how is he going to develop? We're going to get into more of this in just a moment, because Stephen Curry also offered some opinions on Kuminga's lack of playing time, and it's actually been 2 games, really, right? I mean, because the Suns game, he didn't come in until 3 minutes remaining in the third quarter, and the game was pretty much out of hand by then. So he was just playing garbage time. So we'll break that down and so much more after we give some love to PrizePicks. Let me find that overlay. There you go. PrizePicks, it's super fun. Just to break it down again, you got to pick 2 to 5 players. It's legal in California, by the way. Any of you folks here in California can play, and you're just betting over-unders on individuals. They did make a slight rule change this year that I'm still adapting to, which is that you can no longer bet on 2 players on the same team. But it's borderline. I was about to say addicting. That's not the right word. It's just I just can't stop playing it, though. It is fantastic. And you can download the app. You can go to prizepicks.com. Kylen, have you played yet? Have you got?
I have not yet, but
okay,
it's on my list.
I recommend it. I strongly recommend it. Even when you lose, which I've done for 2 times in a row now. Pick 2 to 5 players. And again, all you got to do is bet over-unders, points, rebounds, assists, a combination of things. Whatever you feel is your strongest suit for prognosticating. Download the PrizePicks app. Go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100. That means if you put in $100, they'll give you $100. And if you don't have $100, you only have $50, they'll still match that $50. 100% match. You got to use the promo code, though, Locked On, to get that match. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen today. After us, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the game that matters the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on the app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter and Instagram at Kylen Mills. Here's Stephen Curry, who also shared some thoughts about Jonathan Kuminga's frustrations over not playing, and if there are any frustrations even. So here is Steph, the team captain, offering his thoughts.
Oh yeah, we've talked about the 11-man rotation that you guys have, and that'll kind of push somebody to the edge. Right now it's Kaminga, DNP tonight. How are you seeing him kind of handle that? And I guess just what are your as a veteran, what are your thoughts on that right now?
I hope he's pissed off about it. I hope he's frustrated, because that's what's going to make it worth it when it comes his way. Maybe, there's some comparisons to even me, Draymond, and Klay, like what we went through our first couple of years. I got a couple of DNPs my rookie year. and then we weren't really playing for nothing after December, January, and I got some burn. Klay was playing behind Monte for a while. Draymond was playing behind D. Lee. There's guys that David Lee. There's guys that are who we are now with having been patient and just kept our head down at the beginning of our careers. And you see the finished product or the now product, and it's hard to tell somebody 12 years ago like went through a similar situation, because we've had success and had championships, and he's tasted a little bit of that. But that's all you can do is keep preaching that, knowing that that's how the league works. Things change really quickly. He's put in a lot of great work, great approach to it, and he's playing for a coach that really is going to maintain that perspective of your time is coming. It's not like you're getting demoted or anything. It's just be patient. So we've all gone through it, and his time is going to come.
Let's hope that's the case. I heard loosely, don't quote me on this, but that Monty Poole, who is as Warriors insider as they get, he was on Papa and Lund, KNBR's midday show, and Lund, by the way, has a show now on Locked On. Go check that out. Where he was saying that the veterans on the team are getting frustrated with Kaminga not having the focus needed during practices. He oftentimes looks lost, where he's just not keeping up, and I don't know what that means, but that might be part of the reason why Kaminga is not playing. What Steph said certainly should assuage anyone who might feel a little nervous about Kaminga not playing right now. He is young, right? I mean, he just turned 20, so. But I'm with you, though. It's like he's never going to develop into the superstar that he could become if he doesn't play. And basketball's positionless, So I know Kerr loves Ty Jerome because he can handle the ball, but Kaminga's not a horrible ball handler. Kaminga could bring the ball up. And again, in a game that's positionless, I would agree with you, Kylen, that Jonathan Kuminga should be out there playing instead of Ty Jerome. I know Jerome only played 7 minutes, but still, that's 7 minutes Kuminga could have played to prove himself, to earn more minutes. I mean, this is a player that last year was starting in the playoffs, and now you're not playing him at all. I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. And maybe the G League is what needs to happen. I was not a fan of that idea originally, but it's better than a DNP. I don't know. Any last thoughts on this? I mean, look, obviously in Myers we trust, in Kerr we trust. They have earned the benefit of the doubt. But with that said, again, I mean, it's just weird. It is weird to me that Kaminga, number 7 pick in the draft, started 2 or 3 playoff games last year, is now not even seeing minutes, while his 2021 draft counterpart Moses Moody is seeing minutes. They're the same age. I know Moody came up under Musselman and is much more developed, and people say he has an quote unquote old soul, referring to his maturity. But still, the DNPs, the low minutes like this, I feel like he needs the reps if he's gonna become the player that the Warriors need. Any last thoughts, Kylen, before we move on from this subject?
Yeah, I agree. I think there is some truth to what Steph said, and that young players go through this at some point. They all do. Even Steph Curry, even some of the stars of the league have had to sit behind someone, or maybe weren't happy with the amount of minutes they were getting at some point in their careers. And there's something to be said for being patient, keeping your head down, continuing to work, and then proving yourself.
Right.
And a lot of NBA players come out on the other side of that and end up having seasons, like the Warriors championship run, and end up really developing. But I still think it needs to be taken into account that he has to get those reps on the floor. And, just being a DNP where he's not playing a single minute, like, I don't think that's benefiting, Jonathan Kuminga or the Warriors
Correct.
at all. And I do think that he could have gotten those 7 or 8 minutes last night, and I don't think it would have changed the outcome of the game.
I
Ultimately,
agree.
if he had gotten those minutes over Ty Jerome. And to me, that's why I look at it. Like, would Jonathan Kuminga have affected the outcome and the team's ability to win? Like, for example, or would putting him in be detrimental to the team? Now, granted, he hasn't played great early in the season, but I don't think that Ty Jerome did anything, heads and tails above what Jonathan Kuminga's been doing, to where Kuminga getting those minutes would have affected the outcome of the game. So, I mean, like you said, Steve Kerr, Bob Myers, you got to trust their plan and their process. But I'm hoping that they will continue to find ways to get Jonathan Kuminga more experience, because to me at this point, like reps. Like that's exactly what he needs, and game reps. And I do think it's interesting about that comment you said Monty Poole said. I had not heard that.
Yeah, it was just, and no one disputed it. I brought it up last night with I was on our friend Larry Kruger's show. He does a lot of post game action after Warriors games. It's just it's just a goofball program that we do. But I brought it up there and no one disputed it. And it was just a couple of people on Twitter mentioning that that Kaminga was being asked to focus on defense, on rebounding, which I agree. Those are parts of his game he does need to focus on now if he wants playing time. And apparently, supposedly, Kaminga was focusing much more on his one-on-one scoring, his offense. And if that's the case, if he's not listening to coaches, then that's a problem. That's a problem. You got to listen. Jordan Bell a few years ago, I don't know if you remember that incident where he played a practical joke on Mike Brown and he got suspended a game for that. This coaching staff does not have patience for young players who don't listen and who rebel. And I don't know if that's what's going on. All I know is that Kerr's always had like a short leash, on Kaminga, because last year there were a lot of games where he'd come in, he'd play 10 minutes, and if they weren't the greatest 10 minutes, you would not see him again for the entire game. This year, Kerr's not even giving him those 10 minutes. He's just like, no, I don't trust you. There is a lack of trust. There's clearly a lack of trust there, and the why of that is a little perplexing to me. I don't know. That's it. We're moving on. We're done.
I'm going to end it on that note. So on to the next.
Sounds good. Well, the next is Klay Thompson. I thought had a solid game last night, and I still think he's going to be fine. I really do. And he had a good game. And the shooting percentage wise, meh. 6 for 19 from the field, 5 for 14 from 3. But he hit that dagger 3 at the end of the game to seal it for the Warriors win over the Miami Heat. Finished with 19 points. But after the game, he's answering questions, and then he decided to end the press conference on this note. And that note was talking about Charles Barkley's comments about him, saying that he slipped. And so here's Klay Thompson reacting to that.
I got one thing to say. It hurts when, someone like Charles Barkley with the platform he has says you're not the same player prior to the injuries you have. It's like, no duh, man. Consecutive years, I tore my ACL, my Achilles in consecutive years and still help a team win a championship. It hurt hearing that because it's like, man, I put in so much freaking effort to get back to this point. Like, it's hard to even put into words what I had to do to be the player I am today. And it's like, I played 57 games in 3 years. Like, give me some freaking time to get that back and just hear someone say, oh, he's not the same as he was prior to the injuries. Like, duh. Like, who goes through something like that and comes back? I don't know. It just hurt my heart hearing that. But you know what? I'm going to internalize it, and it's going to be fuel for me to be even better. And I think I'm very proud of what we accomplished last year, and I feel like I was a huge part of it. So I'm not going to let these injuries be a crutch for me. I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to have a great year. I bet on that.
I love the bet on that to wrap it up. That the confidence there, the motivation. I will say this about Charles Barkley and Kylen. Obviously, I would love your input as well. But Charles Barkley, it's been a shtick for a long time now where he hates on the Warriors, right?
Yep.
We saw it come to full fruition last year during the Western Conference Finals when fans were throwing things at him and he was going to throw like a piece of glass or a bottle back and Kenny the Jet's like, okay, calm down, buddy. But for some reason, Barkley has this insistence of not showing the Warriors love ever. Like if you listen to him analyze any Warriors game, for example, he's always talking about the other team. Even when it's obvious the Warriors are superior, instead of giving them love, he focuses on the negatives of the other team. It's who knows what the reasons are. I've asked numerous colleagues of his what the reasoning is, and none of them know. I've never even heard a confirmation of if it's shtick or if there's something legitimate and genuine behind it. But I do think this time you went a little too far. It's like you didn't have to say that. You could, or at least you could have handled it just a little bit more delicately. And I get Barkley's a personality. I get that it's 99% of what he does is for fun. But I also understand Klay, taking that personally. Your thoughts?
First of all, I think that there's no doubt based on where Klay Thompson is at mentally, what he's had to go through and accomplish physically just to get back to where he's at today, that he's more sensitive to comments like that right now because he has been through so much. And I don't blame him for being more sensitive than maybe he was in the past or some of the Warriors teammates. Like, I feel like people can say stuff about Steph Curry and he shrugs, and I think Klay Thompson, it hits more close to home because he has fought so hard and has had to deal with so much adversity the last couple of seasons. He loves basketball so much and it's an emotional thing for him. So I think it's coming from a place of sensitivity a little bit to have such a strong reaction to what Charles Barkley said. And then on the flip side, I mean, like you said, Barkley's a personality. He's going to say, whatever he thinks he wants to say, or he's going to say whatever's on top of mind in order to get numbers.
I love your dogs. I love them so much.
Oh God.
No, don't.
My husband is in Vegas right now, so he's usually like dog corraler, but he left for Vegas this morning. But what I'm saying is that Charles Barkley says whatever he thinks is going to get ratings. He says top of mind. Their program does so well because they're all off the cuff and they all say whatever they think and they make bold statements, and that's what a lot of analysts and sports pundits do. So I don't think his comments are shocking to me, and I also didn't see the full clip of what he said in the full context, but I don't think he's necessarily wrong and that Klay Thompson isn't the same player as he was before his injuries. But like Klay said, no kidding. I mean, he went through back-to-back injuries. I don't think that means that he can't get back to where he was prior to the injuries or get back to a really, really high level, something comparable to what he was at, but there may be some things that he can't do exactly the same because he tore his ACL and he tore his Achilles, and those are two massive injuries. But that doesn't mean that he couldn't be an NBA All-Star. That doesn't mean that he couldn't, be a huge part of an NBA championship team, which we already saw him do last season. So I don't know. I think the criticism, I don't know. I mean, saying that he's slipping, I think was a little bit harsh. I understand that Charles Barkley maybe could have been a little bit more sensitive, but at the same time, they're doing an entertainment program. They're talking about all kinds of players, and that's kind of what makes TNT do so well is that they all say whatever they think.
Right.
Pretty frankly and bluntly. Yeah. And that's what makes it entertaining. So, I'm trying to ride down the middle and get both sides of it in that, in an entertainment business, they're there to analyze basketball players. That he would say something like that. And I don't think that part of what he's saying is wrong because, I don't think that Klay Thompson's still back to 100%. I wouldn't expect him to be, though, based on what he's been through. And I don't think that necessarily means he can't get there. And then on the flip side, I think that I understand why Klay is sensitive about it, but I do think that he is, just a little bit more sensitive because it's such an emotional topic for him and because he has battled so much. And I don't blame him for being upset or hurt by hearing those things. But what he finished off the press conference with, I think, is the most important thing. Internalize it, use it as fuel, and continue to get better and focus on yourself and block out the outside noise. Because at the end of the day, if the Warriors let every single thing, the Warriors as a team and players individually let every single thing that some of these national media members, pundits, writers, whoever said about them get to them, then, they would never win a championship in the first place. They would constantly be in their own heads about what all these people say, because something that Steph Curry said in response to it was absolutely true. And that the Warriors with success, it means you're going to be talked about more and it means you're going to be criticized more because more eyes are on your team. And, especially members of the media or people who are part of entertainment, they know that talking about certain players and talking about the best team in the league is going to result in a lot of interest from audience members, and it's going to result in ratings or whatever else. So it's something the Warriors have to get used to, and that I hope that Klay Thompson is able to use as fuel.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you will. I love both these human beings for the simple reason that they are genuine, right? Like they're not phonies, they're not fake. Chances are, if they're speaking, you're getting truth from them. Barkley's the only Warriors hater on the planet that I just it doesn't bother me, right? Because he's so funny and I respect the entertainment value. I personally don't agree with Chuck, and that's where I take some take some issue with his comments in that Klay Thompson came back from, again, two horrific injuries. The Achilles one is arguably the worst you could suffer as a pro basketball player. He still averaged over 20 points a game last year. He still averaged over 19 points a game in the playoffs last year. That 20 points a game clip in the regular season last year was just barely off his career average. And in the last 3 games of the NBA Finals, I saw the Klay of old in terms of defense, because that was a huge question mark, whether he would ever become the two-way player that he was pre-injury. Mm-hmm. I really think offensively we will see old Klay. And you're right, this is going to fuel him. And the fact that through 4, when Chuck made these comments, it was after 3.5 games, I think, or 4. I can't remember if he made them at halftime or the post game. But this season so far, it's so not fair to judge Klay, given that, his offseason was not normal. He didn't play pickup basketball like he normally does. And so by veering off the routine, he's not ready yet. The conditioning is not there. That's why his minutes restriction is in place. Maybe he's forcing things early on as a result of that, knowing he can only play limited minutes. My point is that he's done enough already to show that he could still be the old Klay. Again, they won a title last year. They're not winning that last year without Klay. They're just not. He might not have been the second best player, but they're still not winning the championship without Klay Thompson last year. And again, he put up over 20 points a game. I just think Chuck is wrong. I think it's just too soon to judge him and to say he's slipping when your entire sample size is half a season following those 2 major injuries. And again, even in that half season, he still put up over 20 points a game. So, but I'm also very encouraged of the fact that I think we're going to see Klay just tear it up. Maybe not yet, but soon. I'm very, very confident of that. Draymond Green is another question. Draymond, I talked about this on yesterday's show, and we'll touch on this in future shows. If I continue to see his defense regressing, which I am noticing, and I threw some stats out there on yesterday's show that substantiate that somewhat. But again, even that's an early sample size. We'll see what happens. Anything else you want to add before we move on and finish things up?
No,
here?
I mean, I think that to say that Klay Thompson is slipping isn't really fair. But I will say going into the season that I just said that Klay is not quite back yet. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. Back yet to what he was pre-injury. I mean, no kidding. He's still on a minutes restriction. We talked about, you just mentioned his inability to completely go through his scrimmages, the fact that he's still being watched, very closely by the Warriors training staff. And we know he was held out of those preseason games because of the past injuries. To me, it's a no-brainer. No kidding, he's not back. And I think that's something that Klay kind of echoed in his statements. But I think it's not fair necessarily to say that he's slipping. Although I do see the point that, he's not quite there yet, but I totally agree with you. And that doesn't mean that he can't get there.
Right.
And that we won't see the Klay of old this season. I think this season. And I agree that a couple games is too small of a sample size. He did not lead into the season the same way he would in years past because of those injuries, the minutes restrictions, the inability to scrimmage and take part in preseason games. So let's give it more time. But you got to have something to talk about on these shows, and people love talking about the Golden State Warriors, so it's I don't think this is going to be the last time we hear a statement like this be made. So, what Klay said is I hope that he internalizes it and uses it to fuel the fire.
Yeah, people don't realize that sometimes. If you're hosting a show or a program, you have to have stuff to talk about. So sometimes the topic will not be something you will like. And, sorry, but, in this case, but again, I just don't think Chuck was right in this regard. Mm-hmm. And just to put it in perspective for the season, so far, he's averaging close to 10 minutes per game less than his career average of nearly 33 minutes per game. He's currently right now at 23.6. Those numbers will go up, folks. I'm not worried about Klay at all. I'll finish the show on this note. The Warriors are going to start a 5-game road trip, and more specifically, it's 5 games in 7 nights. That means 2 back-to-backs. And here's the rundown. on tomorrow. We're recording this on Friday, October 28th. Happy early Halloween, folks, because this weekend's going to be the party, obviously. So on this Saturday, they're at Charlotte. Then following that, they get on a plane. They go to Detroit. And that's not a short flight either. That's a weird scheduling back-to-back. So it's Charlotte, then Detroit. Then they go from Detroit down to Miami. A lot of flying there again. They play the Miami, right? What? Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, like that's a couple hours go up and then back down.
Yeah, it's weird. And then after Miami, they get a night off. They're going to enjoy South Beach. And then they go to Orlando, and then a back-to-back of Orlando and then New Orleans. And that should be a marquee matchup where they take on the Pelicans in New Orleans. Your thoughts on that 5-game roadie? I think Kaminga is going to see some time on this trip because you're not going to see those veterans playing rigorous minutes and back-to-backs. Your thoughts, any predictions on the road trip?
I don't have a predictions as far as outcomes off the top of my head. I know that Steve Kerr mentioned, and so did Steph Curry, about how important it was to get this win and to get the momentum heading into the road trip, especially after that game against Phoenix, which honestly, that Suns game feels like a fever dream now that like we're to Friday. Like, I can't believe Klay Thompson got the first ejection of his career.
Yeah.
So going backwards a little bit, one thing I want to mention that was one of the more interesting points of discussion during last night's post game was that Thompson talked about the little, brush up with Devin Booker for the first time because we had not heard from him after that game. And he just mentioned how much he appreciates Devin Booker, loves playing against him, loves competing against him. And he said that Devin Booker was one of the first people to text him, Klay Thompson, when he tore his Achilles. And Thompson said that Booker texted him, the shooting guard battle won't be the same. And basically Thompson just said that meant a lot to him. There's a lot of mutual respect there. He said, no hard feelings, like whatever happens on the court is on the court. But then when Thompson was asked, have you talked to Devin Booker since then? Have you guys, just kind of smooth things over, just touch base since then? He was like, no. He goes, I don't got time for that. I don't got time to worry about the past. We're focused on winning games in the future. I'm not reaching out to him. So I just thought that was kind of funny hearing from Klay Thompson after the fact. Also, another one of my favorite parts about what Klay Thompson said is that he blacked out, essentially. He was like, I don't remember anything I said during that scuffle. I mean, not like in a concerning way, but he was just
Right.
It was all a blur, basically, because he was asked about repeatedly, supposedly saying 4 rings to Booker
Correct.
over and over again. And
Correct.
he's like, yeah, I don't know. I blacked out. But I thought it was just kind of funny to hear his side of things in last night's post game.
Absolutely.
One other thing that a lot of people have been quite entertained by that I want to mention on our pod before we go is that Steph Curry had Klay Thompson's back when he was asked about Charles Barkley's comments on Klay Thompson. And Curry, essentially, to sum it up, was like, people are going to talk, kind of what I just said. People are going to talk. They know what the big names are that are going to bring in numbers and get reactions. They also know that the Warriors are going to be contenders again this season, so it makes it interesting to talk about them. But he said the exact quote from Steph Curry was, it's interesting because certain guys kind of forget where their careers or what their careers look like on the back end. And that little quote has been flying around Twitter and the internet because it's seen as taking a shot at Charles Barkley and the way his career ended. And, the ring discussion could easily come up in that again, as we know that Draymond and Barkley like to go back and forth, and that's the ultimate comeback. But Steph Curry did have Klay Thompson's back. I tweeted out that video that's been getting a lot of responses. And he appeared to take a little slight at Charles Barkley in the most subtle of ways, which was kind of entertaining. So yeah, I thought that last night was a lot of fun and a lot to talk about in the post game. But moving forward, big road trip. It's going to be a tough one.
Absolutely. Why is Charlie in Vegas? I feel like he travels like every weekend now. What's going on?
He's at a bachelor party. A lot of weddings this year for both of us.
I love it. Well, you enjoy your freedom this weekend. And say hi to your puppies for me. I love your dogs. All right, folks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kylen Mills. And we'll be back out on Monday. When we come back, we'll have two more games under our belt to assess. Yep. That'll be the Warriors, hopefully coming out victorious against the Hornets and the Pistons on the road. Should be fun. Thanks, Kylen. Thanks, everyone. Later.